Welcome to another SV Lynx video. As you can tell, it's a little early out here and chilly, but I thought we'd step out here in the backyard for a moment to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in the video this week. And we're going to be getting over to the lot and showing you some of the work we accomplished on the boat. And if you notice, the title of this video was, "It's Not Fair!" But it's not meant that way. It's actually meant that the hulls aren't faired yet, and we're going to be working on that. And that includes a lot of sanding on both the port and starboard side of the boat.
So to go along with that sanding, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about something more exciting.
Right.
Our plans for year 2 of our sailing trip, which gives us some motivation to have this wonderful goal that we're going to be getting able to do.
Right, and that keeps us working hard. So let's start with some of the work we're doing over there, then we'll start going over that route. So off to the lot we go.
Monday, after our big day of putting all our bass out down, we're pulling all the pupae off. There we go. The basalt hull.
So all the 3 basalt layers are all on now. They all look really good. There's a few shiny spots here. That's where runoff from the last layer came down. We just sand that, that's no problem. So that hull is going to be ready to go, and we're going to get started over here today doing what we hope is the last of the sanding on this hull. We'll see, but we're going to give it sanding today and see how far we get. But this one's really close. We just getting down the last 5% to get it perfect. And tomorrow we're going to start the fairing process on the starboard hull. Now we're going to do this one just slightly differently than we did on the previous one. Last time we did a horizontal thin layer like this to fill in the facets. And we're going to do the same thing on this one. But on the second layer, when we come down with a vertical layer with a large trowel, we're going to go just a little thicker on the compound to hopefully cut down the number of times that we have to sand and reapply, because there was a lot there. We did 10 rounds on that one, 10 layers. I'm hoping to get this one down to 3 or 4, so we'll see. But that's sort of the plan there, is that we'll put a little bit thicker layer on and sand down a little bit more, but at least it's only one sanding. So we'll start the process of fairing this tomorrow. Today we're going to sand on the original port hull. So I'm sanding from here to the bow for about the last hour, and what I've finally gotten here is that this is ready for paint. This is perfect now, 100%. But you can see this dark yellow here, so we're gonna have to sand all the way down there and all the way back down there. So it's a lot of sanding, but it is the last round because this is just perfect now. So there are no problems at all, but lots of sanding to go. So this is all done with the flexi sander right here. Now Brian's going to go down the other side of the hull before I do the flexi sander with the big torture board, but he'll get that pretty close, and then I'll come through and get it to final like I'm doing on this one. Coming along. So while I've been sanding, Brian's been laminating the sides of our cradles for the starboard hull. And it's got this side and the top done, and we'll flip it over and get the other two sides, and we got one more. Then we'll also put a edging around it as well, the fiberglass. And then we'll call it done. But it'll probably take us a couple more days because we let this set up and such. This week, we're doing an exciting thing. Sanding. Sanding both sides of this hull. We've already spent all of Monday sanding, and this is Tuesday, and we're going to spend all of Tuesday sanding. So, we'll show you a little bit of that, but we don't want to bore you to death. So, we're going to take a break from sanding as far as the video goes, and show you a little bit about what we're dreaming of, because as we're sanding, to keep us motivated, we think about where we're going to be going in the world with this. And so I've already showed you year one's route in another video, which is linked right up here or down in the description. But while we sand, we're going to talk a little bit about where we're going in year two, which is the second half of our South Pacific portion of our trip around the world. So I'll get to that from the office, but we're going to keep sanding while that goes on.
In year two, we continue our voyage through the South Pacific. We ended year one in the Tuamotu atolls, so let's pick up the route at the Apataki Atoll. On leaving the lagoon, we'll turn south, stopping at 3 more atolls, including the big one, Fakarava. By the way, please excuse us if we butcher any of these French Polynesian island names. After entering the North Cut, we plan to sail down the entire length of the Fakarava Lagoon so that we can dive the most famous pass at the south end. Then we'll hop across to the atoll Fight for more scuba diving before sailing west, finally leaving the atolls known as the Dangerous Islands and heading for the Society Islands.
Unlike the Tuamotu atolls, where we are primarily there for the scuba diving, in the Society Islands we will be doing lots of different activities, from snorkeling and scuba to touring, hiking, and exploring. Of course, with it having a big city, Papeete, we will do some provisioning. We start at Tahiti again, stopping in Papeete to reprovision and anchoring in the Taina area. However, we will soon sail across to Moorea, dropping anchor in the gorgeous Cook's Bay anchorage.
From Moorea, we sail further west to Hawaiʻi before moving on to Ra'etia, where we'll drop the hook in the Opua anchorage. From there, we sail north in the lagoon to reach Ta'a, staying in the Puturu anchorage. Then we head for the iconic island of Bora Bora. Once we explore that amazing paradise, we'll nearly be finished on this visit to the Society Islands, but we'll make one last stop in Mupiti. We should note that we may stop at other anchorages in the Society Islands. These were just some examples.
At this point, we break away from the most typical route for boats on the Milk Run by choosing a slightly more northerly route headed for Suweru of the Cook Islands. That's because we want to visit American Samoa and Samoa. We'll briefly stop in Faileasio and Ofu before moving on to Pago Pago to officially clear into the country. After clearing out, we will sail west to Samoa, where we'll clear in at Apia before visiting a few other areas.
On leaving Samoa, we sail almost due south toward the Kingdom of Tonga. By taking the northerly route, we get to stop in the Niue Island group, where we clear into the kingdom. From there, we sail further south to reach the Vavu Island group, where we spend some time at different anchorages in that area.
Continuing our southerly voyage through Tonga, we sailed down to the Hapi Island group, hopefully getting a chance to snorkel with some humpback whales since we will be arriving at the right season when the whales typically come to mate, give birth, and nurse their young calves. We will also do a lot of scuba diving around these islands before finally clearing out of Tonga at Lefuka.
We now head west for Fiji. Oddly, we must sail right past the islands we want to see because Fiji only has 2 ports where you may clear in on the east side of the country, Suva or Savasavu. We're choosing Suva for these formalities. We'll then sail a clockwise rotation around the outer islands, visiting many beautiful locations like the Bay of Islands and Fulanga. We plan to partake of some scuba diving and do some kite surfing. Of course, that's after visiting with the local village chief in each of the islands where we must stop for the kava ceremony.
We will circle all the way around to Savu again, so we can clear out of Fiji before heading south for Minerva Reef. This is a small, roundish reef with a lagoon where you may often wait for a decent weather window to cross to New Zealand. With our performance catamaran, we hope to make the crossing swiftly to avoid typical storms that pass through every few days. Once we arrive, we'll clear into New Zealand at Apua, then head south along the eastern shore, making various stops to see things like Hobbiton, where Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit were filmed. We may also do a few scuba dives since we are California divers, so we're used to cold water conditions.
On arriving in Wellington, we'll wait for a weather window to cross the treacherous Cook Strait, which is considered one of the most dangerous and unpredictable waters in the world. But we must cross if we want to reach the South Island. We'll be patient and wait for the right day to cross. It's only 14 miles wide at the narrowest point, so we can dash across when the weather is nice.
Once we make the crossing, we'll head south along the eastern shore for Christchurch. On arrival, we'll leave SV Lynx at the marina in Lyttelton while we make some inland excursions to visit many locations on the wonderful South Island of New Zealand. However, on returning to the boat, we will retrace our route headed north, as sailing around the south end and up the western shore of the South Island of New Zealand is not a great idea. There are very few places to tuck in when the weather turns bad.
Once we get back to the top of the South Island, we'll enter the beautiful Marlborough Sounds, eventually making our way through to Nelson, where we'll clear out and wait for a weather window to start our crossing to Australia. But on the way to the Australian mainland, we'll use a provision for stopping at Lord Howe Island without being cleared into Australia. We'll visit that island for a couple of weeks of fun before finishing the crossing to the mainland. We'll arrive in Coffs Harbour to properly clear into Australia. We then sail down the western coast, arriving in Sydney Harbour just in time to spend Christmas and New Year's to watch the famous fireworks from the deck of our boat, anchored near the famous Opera House.
From there, we'll backtrack north a short way to the safety of Port Stephens to end the second year. The Admiral and I will be flying back to the U.S. for cyclone season in the South Pacific and to visit with friends and family back in California. We're leaving SV Lynx well south of the cyclone zone, so no problem there. Brian may choose to stay with the boat or fly back with us. If he does fly back, we would put SV Lynx on the hard for 3 months.
This is just the beginning of our Australian adventures, which will pick up in the 3rd year of the voyage, but we'll talk about that in a future video. Well, that's enough dreaming about what's to come. We need to finish the boat before we can get to any of these amazing destinations. So, back to work.
All right, back to sanding.
I love sanding.
Today we are going to try and finish off the stern of the canoes. And to do that, we need to put in our first bulkhead. Yes, bulkhead number 1. Well, it's actually bulkhead number 11, but it's the first one that we're doing. Not very big, as you can see. This is a size here. We've marked the end of the boat, and we did that because we took our end pieces and put them up in there right where the bulkhead used to be in there that was for the form. So we put the actual bulkhead in here, then we measured from certain spots here, drew our line, and now we're going to cut it off to where the actual boat ends instead of all this rough stuff. We're going to do a little test run though first here. Make sure it's not screwing this up too much. We switched saws because that one wasn't doing very well. Okay. This one's going to be a screwball, but all right, now that we cut this off, this piece goes right here, and it's pretty darn good. There's a little bit excess right along here, so we're going to take a grinder and grind this back just slightly to get this to match perfectly here, but it's darn close. All right, we're ready for the next phase. Next thing we're going to do is decore this whole thing and do it a thickened epoxy fill. Then we're going to go ahead and use a router, put a curved edge on the edge of this one right here. And then we'll bond these into place here. This goes here, so I'm going to need to core this over from right here. We're going to route the corner of this now. What you're seeing here is the form. That's not part of the boat, but it allowed us to get this edge straight, so we put it in. We'll be taking that out before we bond in the actual parts of the boat, which are these parts. Now they're split in half because we're going to have our kick-up rudder coming through here. Now, we did route out the inside here because we're going to fill this with a thickened epoxy so that we can round this edge eventually as well. But right now, what I want to do is round this edge right here so that we can tab this over onto those actual pieces. Now you'll notice right here in the center there's some not straight piece here, but that's the reason for that is that there's some epoxy here that give us the right depth, and this gets cut away for the rudder anyway, so this just goes away. So the only part we cared about were out on these two ends. This middle part, it's all going to go away for the kick-up rudder. Right here, you can see we filled this yesterday with thickened epoxy, and it goes back about an inch in here, or 2.5 centimeters. And that gives us something to round off here, but this is just not enough for the basalt to bend correctly over here. This has to be more rounded than that. I'm going to go ahead and take a router and see if I can't round this edge off right now. that worked fairly well. I think that the issue is the radius isn't enough. I think we're going to have to use a different bit. This is not taking off quite as much of a rounding as I think we need on this. So we're going to have to use a different bit. On the starboard hull, we are doing this when we have just the basalt, where this we've already did some fairing. It's actually better to have done it when it was just the basalt, but that's okay. Because all we're going to do now is we've marked where exactly the same distance is over, so that these are perfectly the same. And so we'll cut this off, and then we'll just grind back about 3 or 4 inches of this fairing compound back off again, so that we can go ahead and tape the edges with more basalt around the stern. So no big deal. It just causes us 10 minutes of grinding, so no big deal. But we'll go ahead and cut this off right now. Look who's back. Rebecca's back helping again. And we've been to the store and replaced this broken saw blade with another. So we're going to finish this off now.
Safety glasses.
Wearing glasses.
Safety first.
There you go. One ugly piece of boat removed.
And that, my friends, makes a clean cut.
Look at that. This was the closest one. And so, all done. Don't need this anymore. So now we got to route the foam out of here. That is our next job. So we'll go get set up for that. That'll be good enough. All right. So now we can clean this all out and fill this with our thickened epoxy. Or we're going to have to grind off the fairing compound that's on top of this so that we can have enough room to tab this across. So as much as I don't want to get into a bunny suit, I'm doing it right now. I'm only putting a half suit on because it's very warm. I just want to keep it dust out of my hair and such, so this will do enough off my arms and hair. No problem. So basically like that. We just want to take it down to the basalt layer and rough it up a bit and just do all the rest of it. So while I'm working on the stern back there, Rebecca and Brian are over here finishing up the starboard set of our cradles to hold this boat. Each of those cradles has to hold something like 7,000 pounds each. There's 4 of them, so that's 28,000. Both supposed to be 25,000, but by the time we load some of our gear on there, it'll go up. So they're just finishing off the last of the lamination portion right now, putting around the lip of it. We've already laminated the sides. So the next phase of this will be working on the hulls. This isn't sanding and fairing. What are you talking about? This is epoxy work. Don't worry. We got sanding and fairing for you.
Where's my sanding and fairing t-shirt?
I'm going to get those. I keep promising, but I'll get to it. So I've got this all cleaned up with alcohol and such, and I've mixed up a batch of thickened epoxy that we're going to spread out, or at least I'm going to. Rebecca and Brian are still working on those cradles, but we can get two things done at once this way. Technically, I really don't need to put it in the middle there. Again, we're cutting that out for the rudders. So while I'm doing this, just thinking about those kick-up rudders. A lot of people don't like them. More to go wrong. More complex. Simple spade rudders are easy. I agree with all that. We don't really have much of a choice, and the reason for that is our boat is so extremely shallow draft, 1 foot 9 inches, that a typical spade rudder is going to hang down so far below the boat that it's going to hit the bottom and damage those rudder shafts with all the weight of this boat sitting on there. So we just don't have a choice. We have to use kick-up rudders just due to how shallow the boat is. You do what you got to do. And we like that shallow draft. We can get into some hard to reach spaces for a lot of boats because of that shallow draft. And it's just less drag, easier on our electric propulsion, makes those batteries last longer because they don't last all that long. There's a lot of things we like about those, that shallow draft, and therefore we have to embrace our kick-up rudders. Another downside of kick-up rudders is the cost. Just more expensive. We had to pay to get a mechanism for them for the kick-up portion, and I haven't had that manufactured. And they're also just a lot of work to make. You'll see that as we start building them, but it's a lot of work, and it'd be much easier to just have to build those spade rudders. We have to build those, and we have to build the casings and all that good stuff. So a lot more work. But if you don't have a choice, and that's what your boat has to have to make it work, then that's what it is. All right, easy enough. Take off this excess. See if I can get some off the bottom here. Less to sand later. All right. Job done.
So we accomplished a lot this week over at the build site. Got a lot of progress.
Yeah, many things accomplished and many more coming next week. And part of that's due to the support we get from our patrons.
Yep.
And of course, all of you who spend your time with us each week watching our videos. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon to be notified of our next video.
And we're going to see you guys next week.
Bye.